Alrighty, well, thank you all for coming. As I said, my name is Nick Rudolph. I'm the Baltimore Regional Director with Maryland Capital Enterprises. And today we're here to talk a little bit about business plans and cash flows and how you can use those to access capital to start or grow your business. Before we get started, a little bit of information about who we are. Maryland Capital Enterprises is a CDFI, a community development financial institution. A lot of people think of us as a nonprofit bank, but really we're much, much more than that, and we're not even a bank at all. So, first, we offer what we call technical assistance, and that's in the form of one-on-one counseling, webinars like this, occasional classroom sessions, and our annual Women's Business Center conference. We started in 1998 over on the Eastern Shore on the lower three counties, giving out $500 loans. We grew, we got associated with the SBA and became an SBA intermediary lender. So we could become a micro lender and do loans of up to $150,000. And in 2012, we jumped over the bridge to the Western Shore, and we now serve Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Anne Arundel County in addition to the Eastern Shore. And we've actually just added Harford County. In 2020, we became that Women's Business Center, which means we can offer enhanced services to women and minority entrepreneurs. So you can find out more about that at marylandcapital.org or Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. So most people do want to come and talk to us about money. So we are an SBA intermediary lender, but the SBA doesn't actually do loans except for in disasters. What we do is we lend money that we raise elsewhere, whether it be through government or private sources, and the SBA backs those loans. We do get money from the state, from the federal government, and from banks, and from some earned income as well. We also, as I said, provide that counseling, training, and assistance developing business plans, and so much more. So even if you aren't interested in a loan, check out our website, click on that Get Started button, and sign up to be a client for free. So we're going to talk about the cash flows and the business plan and why they are so important. But I think before we get started on that, we want to talk about, what it takes to start a business, sort of generally. So we like to think about a business as, maybe a building. So if you ever go downtown and you see that there's a plan on an empty block, for a skyscraper, you see the fence go up, you see the picture of what that building is going to look like. And then you don't really see much going on for the next year, 18 months, because what they're doing is they're building the foundation. They're doing all of the research they need to do. They're making sure they've got all their supplies in order. They're making sure they've got all their permits so that when they start building, it can go up pretty quickly. And then you have, a hustling, bustling, multi-use project, in about 6 months after you start the building. Same thing with a business plan, with a business. The more you spend building that foundation before you open, the greater chance of success you have. So we're going to talk about writing a business plan to get a loan. And the reason why I say that is a business plan can be used for many, many things. And when I suggest writing a business plan, I suggest writing it large, encompass everything, and then you can make changes to the business plan based on who's going to read it. So if you're applying for that rare for-profit business grant, you are going to want to focus on how you are part of a community, how you might be hiring from the community, nonprofits that you give to. But if you're applying for a loan, while banks and we love that stuff, really the most important thing is, are you going to be able to pay that loan back? Because we are stewards of either federal or private money. So, who needs the business plan? Absolutely everybody needs that business plan if you're running a business. And the reason why is not only for the foundation, but as you're growing your business, as you're, sustaining and figuring out if you want to expand, you're going to get in the weeds. There's going to be a lot going on, and you might find yourself lost from time to time. The business plan can help ground you, show you what you need to be doing next, and make a plan to move forwards, get you unstuck. And so that's why I like to think of it as much more than just, a money-making document. So, what should your business plan contain? We're going to go into great detail about what goes into a business plan. But really, it's the story of your business. You want to talk about your passion, why you started it, and then you want to move, into how you're going to structure the business, how you're going to market it, how you're going to run it, and how you're going to make money. And as I said before, you really want to consider that audience. You want to change the business plan based on who's reading it. If you get to know the folks at your bank, you might know that certain things are more important to them than others, and you can highlight those in your business plan. So what are we looking for, and what is a bank looking for when we're funding that, when we're looking to fund a loan? First of all, we're looking for passion. We want to know why you have the drive to continue and grow this business. Are you opening up an assisted living facility because you saw the way some of your elder relatives were treated and you want to do better for your community? Are you opening up, your own salon because you've been doing well in the chair that you're renting somewhere else and you're ready to take on that responsibility? We're looking for expertise, and that means either experience, education, or mentorship. So we want to know that you know what you're doing or you have the ability to get that knowledge quickly. We also want to know about any certifications or trainings that are necessary for your business. So, if you're opening a trucking company, you've got your CDL license, things like that. Research. We want to know that you understand your market and your target customers. So we want to know, that your industry is growing either nationally, internationally, or locally. We want to show that there's room for you to add your business to the market. And when we say target customers, we're not, we understand that most businesses can serve everybody. But when you're talking about a target customer, we want to see who you're going to drill down on, who you're going to advertise to. So if you're opening up that salon in Baltimore City, you can serve everybody, but maybe you're focusing your marketing on, African American women aged 24 to 54 who make $150,000 a year because you're a more of a high-end salon. So you want to focus your advertising on places that are going to get those folks, and then anybody else can get that as well. We also want to know your contingency plans. What if you can't work for 6 months? How will your business survive? And one thing that people really forget to do a lot is make an ask. The reader wants to know what you're expecting from them. So if you put that at the beginning, it's going to help shape the way they're looking at the rest of your business plan. So before I go into the different parts of the business plan, I wanted to see if there were any early questions. Does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay. So let's talk about what is in your business plan. Went too far. So the first part is your executive summary. This is often the part that you are going to write last. Um, and the reason why you're going to do this last is because you are going to write the rest of it and pull from that as so that it is a summary of what the rest of your plan is. But one thing that you really do want to do is open up with a strong sentence. So we're going to be doing a cash flow in a bit for a fake company that I did not create that's called Nick's Dill Pickles. How I might open my executive summary is, Nick's Dill Pickles is owned by Nick Rudolph, operating out of Baltimore, Maryland. It's an LLC that makes wholesale pickles to sell at restaurants and to sell at farmers markets. We are seeking a loan of $15,000 to purchase more pickling equipment. So then the reader knows exactly who I am, where I'm located, what my business does, and what I need from them. Then you want to talk about your story. What drew you to the business? Is it that I just really, really loved pickles? Is it that you really, really have a passion for animals, so you're opening up a veterinary clinic? What is it that brought you there? Then you want to talk very basically about what your business does and what is your special sauce. Why are people going to come to you rather than your competitors? Is it service? Is it a product? Do you have a certification other people don't have? Is it your pricing? What is it that's going to draw people to you? And then at the end of that executive summary, you want to make a more detailed ask. Talk about specifically what you're going to be looking to purchase with those funds. Talk more detail about what you want from that reader. Then we come to the longest part of your business plan, which is your marketing plan, which is so much more than how you're going to advertise your business. So the first thing you want to do is do some research. You want to look for industry publications or financial publications and get quotes out of those that show that there is room for your business in the market. Perhaps, the salon industry is growing 4% year over year in Baltimore, and that's why there's room in the market for you. Then you want to talk again, as I said, about your target customer. Who is that primary customer? How are you going to drill down and get them? Then you want to talk about the competition. And I know it sounds tough, but you want to talk about who they are and what they do well. So, these guys are already thriving in the economy. They're doing well. We know that. So we want to see that you are understanding why they are doing well. Then you want to talk about how you're going to thrive in the market with them. Is there just enough room? Or are you going to, need to have that special service, that special sauce? And when you're thinking about your competitors, you want to think locally, regionally, and nationally slash internationally. And what that means is, we had a person who wanted to open up a comic book store. They listed the two comic book stores within a half hour of their location, and then Amazon.com because you could buy anything in their store on Amazon. Showing that they knew that showed that they really had done their research and made it a little bit easier for to get that loan. You also want to think about your price point. Are you high end, middle of the road, or are you a value proposition? There's room in the markets for all of those, so you just need to figure out where you're going to fit. Then you want to talk about the advertising. So, are you going to be doing a social media campaign? If so, in detail, what is that going to be? Or are you sort of a service business that works with other businesses? Will you be going to network events, joining chambers of commerce, things like that? You want to talk about, any conferences that you might want to go to advertise your business. So it is really much more than, newspaper, radio, TV, and internet. It's all the ways you're going to get the word out about your business. The next section is your organization and your operations section. So this is how are you going to run that business? So the first thing you want to talk about is your legal structure. Are you going to be an LLC, an S corp, a sole proprietor? There's different, risk or legal reasons why you might want to have one or the other. So you might want to talk with us or with a small business lawyer to figure out what's best for you. Then you want to talk about your location. Are you a home-based business? Are you just doing things online? Or are you going to be a brick and mortar business? If you're brick and mortar, what are your hours? If you're not, when are you going to be answering the phone? How are you going to handle those customer complaints or, customer praises? So you really want to think about how it's going to work. It could also be a hybrid of more than one. You could be online and brick and mortar. You want to talk about your employees. Are you going to have to hire somebody? And if you do have to hire employees, what is your plan? Are they going to be W-9 or are they going to be 1099 contractors? Are you going to start off with help from your family and expand from there? If you're going to be having other people run your business for you, talk about who those managers are. Talk about why they have the experience to run this business. You also want to talk about insurance. Every single business needs to have business insurance. You're not going to be able to get a loan or a grant without that. For a lot of businesses, it's just a general liability that might be only, $600 to $1,500 a year. But if you're working with automobiles, with kids, with food, it might go up considerably. So talk to an insurance agent. Figure out what you're going to need before you start making the ask. You also want to think about growth. Do you want to stay as one business, or do you maybe want to expand to multiple locations or even franchise in the future? So you really want to think about, what you want to be doing. You also want to talk about how you're going to exit. If you have a plan to sell the business in a few years, let us know that. There are serial entrepreneurs that love doing that. They build a thriving business, they sell it, and they build another one. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But think about how you're going to get out of the business eventually. And it could be running it until you're retired. That's perfectly fine. Like I said before, the contingency plan, what if you're unable to work? How is your business going to survive without you? And then we are still at the end of the COVID-19 thing. So if you're client facing, if a customer or employee tests positive, how are you going to let folks know, how are you going to deal with that? Then we come to the financial plan. And this is actually a much more simple part than most people think. If you're a new business, talk about your startup costs. Try to break it out as much as possible and include quotes if possible. If you're an existing business, you want to talk about your profit and loss. If you've been around for 2 or more years, let us know what you've been doing the last 2 years. You also want to make sure to give us existing on any loans or debt the business has. The last thing that we want to do when you're applying for a loan is to be surprised by something like a loan that we didn't know you had. You also want to talk about your break-even point. How many customers do you need to see? How many sales do you need to make in order to pay your bills, pay yourself and pay the loan? We're going to require 24 to 36 months of cash flow projections, and we're going to do a sample one of those in just a little bit. But what we're looking for is monthly, how much you think is going to be coming in and how much you think is going to be going out so that we can see that you can break even and make a profit. Um, you also want to talk about your credit if there is any issues. Most CDFI and bank startup loans are going to go off of your personal credit only. So if there are issues and you let us know about that up front, we can mitigate that oftentimes. If there are issues and you don't let us know about them and we're surprised, that might make it harder to get a loan. You also, if you know you may have some credit issues or some collateral issues, want to discuss about the possibilities of having a guarantor. This section does not need to be long, and the projections can even be a separate document from the business plan. So we're going to go into cash flows in just a moment, but I wanted to stop and check the chat and see if there are any questions, or if anybody has any questions, just feel free to unmute and ask them as we go along. All right. So now we're going to get into the meat of the presentation, which is the cash flow projections. So what are they and why do we need them? So what they're really doing is that they're showing how much money is going in and how much is coming out so you can figure out if you're making a profit. We like to say, if you're making $5 million a week, but it's costing you 6 million, even though you've got that income coming in, you're not a successful business. Now you will see that here in the right-hand corner, this is the document that we use for our cash flows. It is good to know that it's not required that your cash flows be in this document. This is just one that we found is simple and easy to use. This is a living document that's going to change over the life of the business. Most of these cells will not be accurate. They'll be maybe close, but these are all estimates. We also want to see that you're realistic in your expectations. So we had a person who had handmade wedding invitations. They charged about $1,000 a wedding, and their cash flows basically said that there are 10,000 weddings a year in Maryland. We're going to make $10 million. Well, we all know that a one-person shop is not going to be able to handle that much business. We also know that people elope and they don't need wedding invitations, or people make their own or don't have enough money for such high-end wedding invitations. So we said, show us that you can do it with, 5 or 10 a month. And then if you do more than that, then that's just gravy and that's great. We also want to make sure that you're breaking down your income stream and expenses as much as possible. For instance, if you're a restaurant, you might want to break it out between dine-in, carry-out, and catering, or maybe between food, alcohol, and merchandise. Let's say that you had a business and you thought it was going to be 70% food and 30% alcohol, but really it's ending up to be more 50-50. You can use the cash flow projections to make a decision. Is the issue that your drink program is just really strong and you want to focus on strengthening that to bring more money in? Or is it that the food program is weaker than you thought and you need to be adding to that? So it's a good way, a good document to help you make these decisions about your business. You also want to think about if your sales change month to month. If you're a landscaper, your December might not be as busy as your April. Things like that. And then we want to make sure that you're paying yourself. You need to be able to have a roof over your head, food, clothing, and a little bit of money for fun as well. So why do we need to do this document? Well, it is important for CDFI and SBA loans, and really for most bank loans as well. It's that great planning tool. It shows you that difference between profit and money coming in. It's general good governance, and it shows you when you can start paying yourself. That's the big one right there. So what you're going to need is a template, either ours or somebody else's. You're going to need to know how much money you have in the bank specifically for the business. You want to break out your income expenses, understand what your payroll is, include your loan as income and your payments as expenses, and understand what your inventory costs. If you're selling your widget for $10, how much are you paying for it? So now we're going to create a cash flow spreadsheet. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for just a moment and bring up the blank cash flow. This will be a blank one, and the full one will be available. If you just email me, I'll put my email in the chat in just a moment. We'll be able to send that to you. Pardon me. So this is our spreadsheet, a little bit bigger than on that previous slide. So the top section is going to be your cash on hand at the beginning of the month. Then we're going to break into your income and then your expenses. And there's two different kinds. There's just sort of the more variable expenses at the top and your more set expenses at the bottom, or your one-time costs. At the end, this little cell that's highlighted is going to tell you how much money you have in the bank at the end of the year. So, like I said, this is not a real business. All of these numbers are completely fake. I do not know how to run a pickling business. This is just for an example. So, what I'm going to be doing here is starting a small pickling business to sell at farmers markets and a wholesale. I did a little bit of saving and I have $1,000 in the bank for my business. I am going to ask Maryland Capital Enterprises for a $10,000 loan. So right now, my income for that first month is $10,000, and then I had that $1,000 in the bank. So I assume that in that first month where I get the loan, I'm going to be purchasing equipment, getting everything ready to get it started. So I'm not going to make any sales in June. In July, we're going to start making some sales. July in Baltimore City, there's the Saturday and Sunday big farmers markets. So you are getting a lot of foot traffic. So, with 4 weekends, you average $1,000 a weekend between the two. So that's $4,000. I just started, I don't have time to start talking to restaurants to sell wholesale. So there's not going to be any money in there. And then online, my friends and family from across the country, in that first month, they're going to buy a bunch of jars. So there's going to be some money in there. August, the summer's really going. The word's getting out a little bit. So, we're going to do a little bit better sales at those farmers markets. And then a restaurant owner came up to me at a farmer's market and wanted me to start supplying their restaurant with pickles. So that's an extra 250 bucks a month. Online sales, my family's bought the stuff, so that's going to go down. But folks have heard about us, so that might give us a little bit more income. Just to be conservative, I'm going to say I'd cap that at $500 a month. So September, the weather is getting better. There's more hearty food, so pickles are more used. So you're going to do a little bit better there. So let's say $6,500 for the month. I'm going to add another business at 250 bucks and keep this at $500. In fact, I don't think I'll ever make more than $500 online, so we'll just go ahead and paste that through. So then in October, again, both farmers markets are open. They're doing great. I think we'll probably stick around the same there, add another restaurant. November, it's getting a little bit cooler. People are not 100% thinking about the holidays now, so we might do a little bit less, but we're going to add another restaurant. Then in December, people are buying holiday presents. Both markets are still open. We've got enough of a name for ourselves that we think it might jump up a bit. So we'll go up to 8,000 for December. We're going to add another restaurant as well, and we will probably have some additional online sales for the holidays. January, that's going to be the worst month. We're down to one farmer's market. There's not a lot growing, and people don't have a lot of money after the holidays. So that's going to bring that down a lot, maybe to 1,500. But we are going to add another restaurant. February, there's a little bit more money, so maybe $2,000, adding another restaurant. March, it's starting to get pretty out. People are starting to get outside. We're probably going to see a pretty significant jump there, maybe back up to 3,500, and we're adding an additional restaurant. April, again, we've just got the one farmers market, but it's starting to really, really pop off. So I think we'll add another $1,000 and another restaurant. And then in May, we're going to have both farmers markets. It's going to be exciting again. The people who went to the Sunday market are going to have missed our pickles. We're probably going to have a great month. And we're, of course, going to add another restaurant. So now I've got my income for the year. So I'm doing 55,500 at the farmers markets, 14,250 from restaurants, and $6,000 from online sales, in addition to this $10,000 loan. So that's a total of $85,750 in income. So now let's talk about the cash that we're paying out. And the first is the inventory. Like I said, I don't understand how this works in reality, but we're going to make an assumption that it cost me 25 cents on the dollar to make a pickle. So my income was all in in lines 13. And then it will go down, not including the loan because there's not an inventory cost with that, down to line 17. Then we are going to multiply that by 0.25 to get 1/4. As you'll see, we didn't have any sales in that month, so there's $0 there. But now these are going to equal out to be a quarter of what the costs are. Since there's a lot of 50s in there, that's why we're not getting equal hundreds and we're getting numbers like those. That's perfectly fine. So, in my $75,750 worth of pickles, it's going to cost me almost $19,000 to produce them. I am going to be having some friends help me out at the farmers markets. I'll be paying them, maybe $15 an hour. So, I assume for the month, $300 for each farmers market. Um, so that's going to go through December. January, I'm going to be able to handle myself. February, I'll be able to handle myself. I'll bring on one person for the Saturday markets once the spring comes, and then back to two people for when the other market opens. So I've got $4,800 in salaries. Now, these people would probably be contractors, but just for this exercise, we are going to have the payroll expenses for them as if they were full-time employees. So we assume that to be about 10% of their pay. Now, the way that this business is going to work is that I'm going to hire space in a commercial kitchen to work in the evenings to make the pickles. So I'm going to have all of my utilities and things like that paid for in my rent. So I'm not going to have to worry about trash or dumpsters or anything like that. I will need some office supplies though. So, maybe we'll start off with the $500 at the beginning of the year, and that should run us through the full year. We don't need to have subscriptions. This is a small business that doesn't have storage. I'm going to want to get the word out on a social media campaign about this business, but it is a pretty small business, so I don't have a lot of money to invest in that. So maybe we'll do $250 a month for the first 3 months, bring that down to 150 for a couple months, 100 for a couple months. Maybe in December, bring that back up to 250 for the holidays, and then we'll just have $100 a month going forward from there, except for bring it back up to 250 once that second farmers market opens. Now, distribution costs. I'm going to have my customers pay for the shipping and handling and all of that, so I'm not going to have a cost for that. But if you're going to be doing deliveries or things like that, that might be your gas and wear and tear on your vehicle. Now, as far as accounting goes, we you want to have an accountant and a lawyer that you know. You don't necessarily have to have them on retainer or anything. What I recommend doing for a small startup business is saving $50 a month in escrow so that you've got a little bit of money in case they're needed, especially at the end of the tax year when you want to have somebody doing your taxes. The rent at this place where I do my pickling, again, this is not a real place. We're going to say it's $500 a month because I'm only working 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. there. I'm keeping my full-time job. I am going to add a line to my personal line for the business so I know if people are calling from one of the or the other. That's going to be $40 a month added to my personal cell phone plan. A lot of people also use Google Voice, which is free, but it's a little bit longer before they can get you on the phone. As I said, the utilities are free. I am working with food, so the insurance is going to be a little bit more. So let's say $200 a month to get that to $2,400 for the year. Um, the state has a $300 tax each year for your small business, so I'm going to put that there. And so right now, as you'll see at the end of the year of that 85,000, I've spent $37,108 on those. Now, a $10,000 a month loan, a $10,000 loan, might come out to about, $200 a month, probably a little bit more, but just to make this easy, the first month we're not going to pay, and probably there's a chance that the second month you're not going to have a payment either. My business does not have any other debts, but I need to spend that $10,000 on the pickling equipment. Well, not all of it, but money on that pickling equipment. So we're going to spend $7,500 of that 10,000. The other 2,500 is what we call working capital. It's money as a buffer as we're getting started. We're just getting started, so I'm not going to have a reserve for in case things break to start because they're still going to be under warranty. I'm keeping my full-time job, so I don't need to pay myself this year. So as I started off with $1,000 and took a loan of $10,000, So that's $11,000 in the bank. I'm making my sales, I'm paying my employees, I'm paying my loan, I've made my startup purchases, and I'm ending the year with $40,143. Now we do require 2 years, so we're going to show how we're going to make a second year much easier. So we're going to copy the first year. We're going to go to year two, we're going to go to 1A, and we are going to paste that year in there. We're then going to go to the bottom. We're going to take this $40,143 and stick it in here at the cash in the bank or cash on hand. Um, then we're going to go look at our farmers market sales. So, we're going to keep growing, I think about $500 a month during the busy months. And we'll have a big month in December. And then we're going to go down um, significantly for the cold months and then back up um, once the weather gets nicer. I'm going to cap my wholesales at $3,000 a month just to keep this easier. And then I'm just going to have $500 a month across the board as well for online sales. I do not need a second loan, so we're going to take that part out. So now you can see I'm doing 146,000, almost double the money that I did in year two. That makes in year one, that makes sense. We're growing. Um, we're probably going to give our employees a bit of a raise, um, or we might need an extra employee every once in a while. Oop, that's a lot of money. 750 there. An annual supply order of 500 bucks. The advertising, we'll just average out for the year at 125 a month. If we've got that buffer, why not have a little bit more advertising? Um, Accounting and legal is going to stay exactly the same. The rent might go up 10%. I'm going to definitely need that phone for that month as well. Insurance should stay the same. Taxes will stay the same. I definitely want to have my payments in these 2 months. Don't want to have missed payments there. Um, I don't need the startup costs again, but in my reserve, I'm going to put $2,500 in case something breaks in the middle of the year. As you can see here now, I'm making a lot more money, so I'm going to start paying myself $2,500 a month from the business. Still keeping my full-time job. I'm not supporting myself on this, but this is, extra money for savings or vacations. So now I'm paying myself $30,000. I'm paying my employees. I'm paying $2,400 of my loan off and saving $2,500 in case something breaks. And I still have $94,000 in the bank. That means that this would be a successful business, assuming that these numbers were correct. Before I take this down, are there any questions about the cash flow spreadsheet? Give you all a second. Okay. I can always bring it back up if there are more questions. Now to bring back the PowerPoint. To talk about a little bit more about how we can use this for getting capital. So first thing that we want to talk about is some pitfalls that people do. The first one is they don't take their year end amount and add it to the next year. So basically, if I had not done that, instead of starting with 40,000, it would have looked like I started with 1,000, and it would not be as successful as a business just on paper. So you want to make sure to bring that number up, making sure that you're paying yourself an appropriate amount, not so much that your business is in dire straits, but not so little that you are, having a tough time making it. People are not seeing the accountants, legal, and marketing as investments. They absolutely are. Some businesses will have negative cash flows for a while before they start making money. But if that's going on for 8 months or a year, you might want to look about how you can improve your cash flows. You want to, again, as I said, use your loan as income and your loan payments as expenses. And again, like I said, with the wedding invitations, having realistic expectations. So what are you going to do with these? You're going to use them as part of your application to get funding. You're going to use them to make sure that your goals are being met, or you need to adjust the goals. You use it for growth planning, and you also want to update them. If you notice the numbers are off, you might want to re-estimate. So now let's talk about funding and how you're going to use all of this stuff to get your money. And it's actually, pretty simple. So we are very similar to a lot of CDFIs, but this is specific to Maryland Capital Enterprises. So we have got three online forms that you would need to fill out to get a loan. The first is our client intake form. What that does is it allows us to offer you all of these services for free, whether or not you're applying for a loan. The client intake form is your key to that. The second part is the actual application, the business loan application for a new or existing business. So that's where you're going to make the ask, briefly describe what your business does, answer a few questions about things that might be disqualifiers, have a few references, things like that. Then we're going to need supporting documents. We need a thorough business plan. We'll need those 24 months of cash flow projections. We need to know that you've been turned down by a bank or credit union. And that doesn't mean you have to have gone through the entire process. If you're talking to your business banker and they say, hey, we don't do startups, that's good enough. If you are an existing business, we're going to need to see 2 years of profit and loss statements, unless, of course, you're less than 2 years old. We're going to need to see your most recent quarterly balance sheet, your last 2 years of business tax returns, of course, unless you're less than 2 years old. 2 years of personal federal tax returns for anybody who owns 20% or more of the business. If your business tax returns are on your personal, that's absolutely okay. We're going to need to see 3 months of business and personal bank statements. And then everything else is optional. So we'd like to see reference letters, resumes, contracts, invoices, leases, LOIs, licenses, marketing materials, anything that you can use to help tell your story, you can add to the application or send to the consultant that's working with you. So what do you need to be eligible for these loans? Well, it seems like a lot, but really it is pretty simple. So number one, being turned down by that lender. Number two, having that thorough business plan, having experience in the field or a mentor to help you get that experience. We want to see the strength and realness of your cash flows. We do require collateral for these loans, so strength of collateral does matter. A fully paid off house is, of course, the best collateral, but we can get very flexible. Reasonable credit. So you'll see here there is not a number on here about a minimum credit score. And that's because that's not really how we're looking at credit. We don't have a minimum score. We're looking for what you've been doing in the last 12, 18, 24 months. So, have you been making all your payments on your mortgage, your credit card, your cars, things like that? Missed payments are a tough hurdle to get over. Um, we also do have two straight up disqualifiers, and that is if you've had a bankruptcy discharge in the last 24 months, or if you have a tax debt without a payment plan. And if you don't know if you have a tax debt, you probably don't. We're also going to looking at the general economic conditions for the venture. Is this the right time to open this kind of business? Is this the right place to open this kind of business? If you're opening up a pizza shop on a two-block area that's got 16 pizza shops, you're going to need to explain to us how you're going to compete in that environment. And then your ability to repay that loan. If the business is not successful, will you be able to make it back into the workforce? So these are our loans that we have. We are a micro lender. So if you are a startup, which is 2 years old or newer, you are eligible to apply for up to $35,000. If you are 2 years old or older, you are eligible to apply up for up to $150,000. The term is going to be, depending on the size of the loan. A $35,000 loan will probably go out at 4 or 5 years. Anything over 100,000 is going to go at 10 years. Our rates are currently 6 to 12%. Most of our loans are going out in that 7, 8, 9% range. We do require collateral. If you're using real estate, we will need a current appraisal that's a year older or newer, old or newer, but don't get that appraisal if you need it until after you've been approved. All owners with 20% or more interest in the company are going to have to personally guarantee the loan. If there are enough owners that nobody owns 20%, we're going to want to see 3 or 4 people do that. There is an application fee. It is $100 plus $25 for each of the owner's credit reports. We only pull TransUnion and we do a soft pull. Then if you are approved, there are closing costs. Generally, a $50,000 loan will go out just north of $48,000. We will take automatic payments from your business checking account. So, make sure you've got that set up. There are no penalties for prepayment. So that means that if your loan is 30 days old, you can pay off your loan for exactly what you owe at that moment. On the other side, if you are not doing as well as you thought and you can't make your loan payment, if you let us know a week ahead of time, we'll figure something out so you don't miss the payment. Interest only, deferred, even restructuring the loan. We are going to visit you twice a year, either virtually or in person as site visits. We're going to have some paperwork you need to fill out that are just simple questions. We're going to want to look at a little bit of your books, and then we'll let you know about any resources we have for you. Then we've got the big question. Is my business an eligible business type for the loan, and what can I use the loan money for? So if we can do just about any small business that's in our coverage area. The only kinds that we can't do are sort of the traditional sin industries. So adult bookstores, 100% liquor or 100% tobacco, things like that. We are able to work in the medical and recreational cannabis space. And then the other business type that we've got a little bit of restriction for is if you're in real estate investing. We can't pay to purchase or rehab the properties. We can pay to, build out your office, buy you big equipment like trucks, jackhammers, things that are going to be reusable over and over and over again. As far as what you can use the money for, any business related expense, furniture, build out, salaries, marketing, supplies. The only exception is if you are a home based business, we cannot pay your mortgage, your rent, or your utilities. We also have what's called a credit builder loan. This is for people who either have no credit or poor credit, who are just wanting to dip their toes into entrepreneurship, or who have an existing business where they need money a little bit quicker to fix something small like a tree root growing through a pipe or something like that. Generally these are going out at 2 years. Most of these are $5,000 loans. These are 9%. Everything else is the same, except for collateral is not required and the costs are much lower. Collateral is good to have, though. It does make it easier to get the loan. Same restrictions, same business types. All of that stuff is the same. So, before I get into the sort of wrap up of the presentation, are there any questions about our loan products or applying for our loans? Check the chat. Nope. Okay. So before I finish, I'd like to let folks know there's nowhere else in the country that has more free small business resources than the area that we're in. Maryland has got all of the great stuff from the federal government, from Baltimore, and a lot of stuff because there's a lot of military around here. So talk to all of us. Ask us all the same questions. Figure out who you're comfortable with and work with them. A few examples are, of course, us, Maryland Capital Enterprises. Most libraries will have a business center. Your county will usually have an economic development corporation. Talk to your chamber, talk to the Department of Commerce. If there are grants, they're going to be the folks that know about it. You've got your SBDCs, your Small Business Development Center. That's an SBA program run out of the University of Maryland where you can get mentorship, help running those business plans, help figuring out your cash flows. Nonprofits like Operation Hope, the SBA themselves, they've got the Senior Corps of Retired Executives or SCORE that might be able to get you a mentor in your field. Even if you're not associated with your local universities, talk to them. They often have interns that are looking for small business or classes that can help you with your marketing. And often they'll run things like a women's business center. Morgan State has one, for example. Salisbury University on the Eastern Shore is a great partner. They help with the SBDC as well. And then you've got your local organizations. Is there a downtown partnership? Is there a Main Street? Is there a local business district where you can join and network with them? So before I really wrap up, this is what I like to wrap up with all of my presentations with, which is 5 things to remember when you're applying for business capital. Number one, as you're starting your business, keep your day job. We want to see that you're going to be able to pay that loan back and you're going to be able to support yourself until that business can pay for all of your expenses. Number two, you need an accountant. Honestly, even if you are an accountant, in order to be eligible for our loans and our services, you need to be in good standing. That means that there are reports that you have to file quarterly. You have to make sure you're paying your annual taxes. When you are starting your business, you're going to be in the weeds. You're going to miss deadlines. An accountant can make sure that doesn't happen. Number three, just like on that last slide, ask for help. There is so much help in this area. It's free. Take advantage of it. This is also not the time to be spending money. If you're applying for a business loan, don't be purchasing a home or a car or opening up credit cards at the same time. It can look bad on your credit. This goes to that back to that can you pay it back? You don't want to pad your bank account by, borrowing money from a friend to make it look like you've got more. That's fraud. That'll land you in jail. Then the no business is an island. People support small businesses because small businesses are part of their community. So when you're giving, give the local charities. Like I said, join all those groups. If you support your local softball team, if you're a bar and you want to, donate food for the concession stands, things like that are really great. We are living in some pretty divided times, so when you're thinking about charity, you want to make sure you're not getting political. Kids, animals, food banks, military, things like that are always safe. It's sort of like when you walk into a bar, there's a reason why sports is on and not news. And that's because if they had Fox News or MSNBC on, they'd be turning off half of their customer base. Really, unless you're a political business, your customers should not know how you're voting because they're all their money is going to spend the same to you. Now we've got a bunch of webinars coming up. Of course, they are all free. The LinkedIn on June 4th is amazing. The SBA really learn about what they're going to do for you. The MBE, DBE, SBE workshop, learn how you can get that minority, that woman owned, that disabled owned, that small business um, uh, certification so that you can be eligible for more government contracts. Our executive director on June 18th is going to be doing one-on-ones virtually. He is a great wealth of experience. He's actually a business owner himself, so he just really great person to talk to for free. He's also a really nice guy. And then I'm going to be doing first steps to start your business on June 19th as well. We've got many more that are up in our education tab on our website, marylandcapital.org. And with that, I will open it up for any questions that we have about small business in general. All righty, let's see here. All righty. I am not seeing any questions. I always think of my best questions as soon as these things end. I'm sure most people do as well. My email address right here is nrudolph@marylandcapital.org. Send me an email. I can get you all the slides. This will go up on YouTube and we'll also be able to email you a link to that as well once that is up. Seeing that there aren't any questions, I'll go ahead and stop it and get a little 10 more minutes to enjoy this rainy evening over here. Thank you all for coming. I really enjoy doing these. I'm hoping that this was helpful for you. Think of me as a resource for you as you're growing your business and have a great evening.
Thank you. Good night.
So good night. Thank you.